Hey everybody, this is Brian Yellow. On episode number 59 of Origin Stories on Creativity, I had Todd Dillard. He was patient with me. I was sick. I am sick. I have a cold. I have a head cold, upper respiratory infection. Unfortunately, there's a little bit of coughing on this episode. Hopefully that's forgivable. He was a great conversationalist. We ended up talking for over an hour and 40 minutes about everything: politics, poetry, chapbook. That's an important thing. I did not know. I never took any poetry. Didn't know anything about chapbooks or other stuff that he knows about. And that really is a sorry state of Mr. Me. He's a great guy. Went to a great school. Lives in a great city, Philadelphia. He says so. I don't know. Clue. I've only been once. They have really good sandwiches. And he lived in Brooklyn. I've lived in Brooklyn. Brooklyn's a great place. It can be scary sometimes, the farther out you go. He lived in the farther out portion. That was a truck. I'm walking my dog. Did mention I'm not feeling good, right? Todd has a kid. He says that he's not feeling good either. He says he hasn't felt good in years. He says there's no hope for me either. His contact information is going to be in the show notes. He's always on Twitter. He's very easy to interact with. And, well, that's just about it for me. I will let him go ahead and speak for himself. Here he is, Mr. Todd Dillard.
That still gets me sick. She recently had the trifecta of roseola, hand, foot, mouth, and the flu.
Oh my God.
That was a rough 2 months there. But I mean, I feel like I should have a Titan level immune system, but I still have just that schlacking that's in the back of your throat. I feel like that's just my toddler's germs setting up house.
How old is your daughter?
She just turned 2.
Okay, my kids are 2.5.
Oh yeah. Okay. It's great. It's great age. They're really fun.
They're a lot of fun, but my God, man, it's like I'm never ending sick.
Right. It is.
It's like I had this is like twice in like a month. This cough and then the clearing of the throat that lasted, never went away, and now I'm back to the cough again.
No, I mean,
oh man, the joy of it.
It's no, my wife, we're lucky enough to have an extra bedroom, and that whole just never ever feeling like I could fully clear my throat. I've been exiled permanently because I snore now. And, that's a thing. It happened to coincide with us getting a king size bed. So I'm not sure what one has to do with the other, but it's there. So yeah.
Well, that's wonderful. So how has being a father affected your writing? It sounds like from what you sent me, you've been writing forever.
So yeah, that's true and false. So I have been writing since I was like a little kid, and I've always wanted to be a writer. And I went to grad school. I did the whole thing, and I graduated.
MFA?
Yeah, MFA at Sarah Lawrence. And
oh, okay. You're Northeast as well.
Yeah, I mean, originally from Houston, but I moved to Yonkers to get that MFA, and then I graduated.
So... Are you still in New York?
No. I moved to Philadelphia a couple years ago.
Oh, okay. You're still New York. That counts as Northeast.
Yeah, I'm still here. But after I graduated, and I got a chapbook published. I was kind of following the typical trajectory where you go chapbook, get some stuff in journals, maybe win like a small contest or something, and then you move forward from there. But after the chapbook, I was like, this sucks. Poetry sucks. I'm tens of $1,000s in debt. I have no prospects, no future. And so I kind of just sold out and I went into industry. And I also decided, okay, well, poetry, if I'm not going to do the academic side of things, then poetry is not really where the money's at. And that for me was the only thought on my mind, which is like, how do I get myself out of this giant, just abyssal debt? And then that was it. Like I just hustled for years, and I tried to teach myself how to write novels on the side. And I ended up weirdly working in hospital administration, which is what I do now. And I wrote a couple of really bad novels. And then to circle back to your question, once my daughter was born, And also once like I hit that sort of life stability, no debt, good job, good salary, good benefits, married, like once my life finally was under control again, uh, I started writing poetry again. And then that's,
Yeah, well, that's interesting.
yeah.
That's interesting. Can you what is a chapbook? You're not the first person to mention it, and I
Okay.
have no clue what it is.
So it's kind of like you know how like a novel is over 40,000 words and a novella
Hmm.
is over 20,000 words, but under 40. Novelette is like over 7,500, but under like 15 usually. Like there's these degradations of what uh, a novel is or what a story length is. For
Hmm.
poetry, it's the two divisions are okay. It's either a book or it's a chapbook, and a chapbook it can be anything that's about like 15 pages to about 30. Um, and technically, too, you can have chapbooks that are just short stories or that are just treatises and things like that. But effectively, it's a very small book. It's not quite a full collection, and usually it's indicative of the material or the project that the writer is working on, and they're building towards a larger work. Sometimes it's not true. Sometimes it's just like an isolated project that they're interested in doing, and it might appear as separate but inclusive of a larger work later on. But generally speaking, it's a small project with, 15, 16 pages.
It sounds so middle school girl. You know what I mean? It doesn't
Mm.
sound like something a college graduate would be working on.
Yeah.
Is that just somebody? Is it just somebody like not speaking of a? I don't know. I mean, it's like I maybe it's because I never took those classes in college.
Uh-huh.
I never took any poetry classes. I stayed away from it completely.
Hmm. No, it's definitely a serious kind of thing. For example, there's an excellent poet, Tiana Clark. She has a chapbook that's out through Bull City Press, and it is like all the rage. I think it's in its 10th printing, and she's a very serious and excellent poet. It's just sort of like a stepping stone, since
Hmm.
it's weird to kind of talk about it outside of the framework of academia because so much of poetry is
Yeah,
steeped in that. But effectively,
it's unfortunate though, isn't it? I
well,
mean, poetry is kind of a academic pursuit because you're not finding it in the mainstream.
well, I do think that it's well. There's that poet that just released a book. She was like an Instagram poet, and she's got like some major book deal, and she's like the new big name. And that I can't remember off the top of my head. Forgive me. But there is definitely a schism between the academia side of poetry and mainstream. I do think a lot more mainstream and a lot more diversity is being like brought into the poetry world.
Hmm.
And actually, right now we're in this excellent renaissance of fantastic poets that are just coming onto the scene. They've been out of the programs for a few years, or they've never even went to a program, and they are just writing some compelling stuff.
Well,
So
I definitely want to handle what you're doing professionally with poetry, but now that you
mhm,
mention it, I mean, writers in general now are having such a hard time making a dollar.
right.
How are poets doing?
I mean,
And kind of they're the redheaded stepchild, so to speak, of of the writing world. I mean, it's like back in the day, T.S. Eliot or whatever could make some serious bank, but now who's making money in
uh,
the poet world?
it is safe.
How can you, for that
The
speak?
poetry world makes no money, and
Yeah.
there are like grants and fellowships and things that you can get that can kind of float you for a bit, but very rarely
Mhm.
is it enough for even a like moderate annual salary. Poets just have day jobs, like I work in a hospital. I know there are poets that do coding, that do project management. Obviously, there are a ton that teach and then adjunct. But in general, it's just kind of you figure out what your hustle is, but poetry is your soul. And I don't know if poetry will ever be a lucrative market. Like it's part of being an artist. And
Yeah.
sometimes you do like write that one excellent book of poetry and you get a major award and you get just this amazing amount of money. But that's not why you write, and that is certainly not what you aim for. Um,
But don't want to be distracted either when you're an
no.
artist. I mean, you don't want to actually wake up in the morning and go, well, I'd love to spend all day agonizing over this stanza or whatever,
Mm,
but I have to go, pay my electricity bill or my rent.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely a poet who benefits, and not just a poet, but a writer in general who benefits from having a day job, because it makes precious the time that I have to write because I know I have to maximize it. And also, I have a lot of ideas that percolate while I'm working. And so, whenever I'm doing like a menial task, data entry, or something like that, I can
Hmm.
have this idea that's kind of forming and taking shape kind of on the back burner. And that's very helpful for me. And then I do a lot of my writing now on the phone in my notes app, um, basically on the train or on my lunch break. And
How long is your commute?
my commute's about 45 minutes each way.
Both ways? Or, okay,
Yeah,
that's not bad.
it's
You
not bad.
don't read, you write.
I don't read, I write. I mean, if I'm having a really crappy writing day, I'll read. Or if like sometimes I need to kind of slip into the mood, so I'll read some poetry, and that'll kind of get things moving. But
The advent of smartphones. So many good novels have been written on trains lately.
I mean, I really do think that's one of the reasons why we're living in this excellent age of poetry, not just to keep harping on it, but it's what I'm focused on right now. And I think the ability to connect with poets and writers, and the ability to constantly be engaging with new work or your own work, um, and but also be out in the world, not be that cliche of the hermit writer tugging on his beard and trying to figure out, like you said, that one stanza. Like, I think being able to engage with the world while also you're engaging with your work is one of the most unique and fascinating dimensions of poetry today.
Oh man, the hermit writer. What a dream.
Right? You can't do that with twins, Brian.
I... I'm trying my hardest. Except for the beard thing. My beard
Mhm.
only grows on like one side of my face,
Oh yeah.
refuses to actually sprout in certain areas on the left side of my chin. It's like, nope, sorry, you're gonna
Yeah.
have to shave. Go shave now.
So my beard grows like really quickly for about an inch, and then it just stops. But
I feel you.
what really grows on me is and this is just the redneck in me, but I naturally grow the most wicked mullet. And
Mullet.
yeah, it's
So
seriously,
it's just down the backside of your
it
skull,
just
huh?
reaches. I have to get my wife to kill it like once a month. It's an ordeal, and yeah, it's just nonstop. Thank God I don't have back hair, otherwise that thing would have been bridged years ago. Um, but yeah, it's just I got to kill the mullet every month. That's a conversation that took a turn.
I've tried. I've tried. The beard just wants to go, except like these certain little areas,
Hmm.
and they're the most irritating little patches. So I don't clean shaven.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. The most interesting thing that I've seen, I stalk Twitter. I am horrible at Twitter. I just
Hmm.
can't make it work for me at all.
Hmm.
They get up to the five figures, and how? I just don't see how that's even possible. I'm stuck with my four, and half of them are like marketers. They
Right.
disappear and they come back. They disappear and they come back.
Right.
But I see that you have started to utilize. I just coughed in your ear. I apologize.
No worries. No worries.
It's like it's involuntary. I see that you're using poetry as therapy, and you're facilitating that for people in therapy. How did you start doing this?
So that's actually the narrative medicine dimension of my interests. And therapy is not actually what it is that I do, even though
Okay.
it's a dimension to what I'm a part of, if that makes sense. Since I'm not actually in the clinic, all of the writing and hospital stuff that I do at the moment is effectively working with health providers, and we have this narrative medicine group, and we workshop writing and prompts that are geared towards helping them work through whatever they're going through, or whatever they've encountered in the clinic. And since I work specifically at a children's hospital, there is a lot of weighty, deep, and intense emotions that these social workers and physicians and nurses and residents and fellows they run into. And the venue where we meet and we talk about that is sort of like their safe space. I don't know if I would call it therapy, though it is like therapy. And then the other dimension of what I do, and this is solely from my own personal interests, but I used to like I won a grant from the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. I love writing for kids. It's like a big part of my identity and why I continue to write. And one of the things that I'm starting at this hospital is a writing workshop for kids in the rehab clinic.
Oh,
And
interesting.
so that's not therapy because they're there for physical reasons. Like they got into a car wreck and they needed surgery on their legs, or they got burned, or there's some physiological dimension to their body that needs help, and they're effectively stuck in the rehab clinic for weeks, sometimes months, and they're bored. And while there's some activities that they are given for just to ease the weight while their body mends, I thought it might be a neat opportunity to kind of get them to write about their feelings, write about their experiences, but also just write about stuff that kids might want to write about, like crushes, how much the cafeteria food sucks, like what do you want to be for Halloween, things like that. So,
Hmm.
I mean, that's if it's any element of therapy, it's more like, okay, well, you're not in a normal part of your life, but here's some like ways you can engage with what's around you, and let's work together on that. So,
Do you give them feedback and things of that nature, or is it just more like here's some paper and a pencil, go at it?
so I actually am still working on identifying how best to move forward with it. Obviously, in the rehab clinic, there are some patients that have cognitive issues, and so they may not be able to even form sentences. But my goal ultimately is to find something that appeals to the majority of the patients there, and then if there is a student or if there's a patient who wants to work one-on-one, then I'll work one-on-one with him, and that's where, or her, and then that's where I will provide feedback, and we can work towards something larger.
It's interesting. I've worked with children before. They
Hmm.
love it.
Yeah,
They
they're
love working that process, the
mhm,
creative process. Even if they don't see word one on paper, they just love to build something like a play
right.
or a poem or a story.
They're so good about not knowing the weird boundaries and the weird baggage that we all carry into
Yeah.
either high school or workshop or college or post college. Like they're just out there writing these weird things and these unique things because they just think it's cool. And that's, you don't get to encounter and work with a lot of people who just are like, oh, writing's awesome. I'm gonna write this poem about Minecraft. Okay, like
Oh
what?
man,
What?
Max Brooks has got a great book out now about Minecraft.
Okay.
The World War Z guy.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of a non sequitur, but you
I
wouldn't think
read.
that he would have written it. Yeah, what?
Oh no, I read obviously World War Z, but I even liked his zombie
Yeah,
survival guide.
yeah. It's such a weird book
It's
for him to have written,
so
but it's kind
yeah.
of a like a real Minecraft book with a
Hmm.
protagonist that's trying to survive in that world. Now, I've only played that game slightly because I was curious what it was,
Hmm.
and supposedly it's I listened to him on the Nerdist, and it
Hmm.
sounds like an interesting read. But anyway, it was the my experience with kids was I just put them in a group, a circle, and said, okay, let's tell this story, and they
Yeah.
workshop this story with me.
Yep.
It was fantastic. I mean, come on, let's do this. What are we going to do? We're going to have a mermaid. Okay, what
Hmm.
the mermaid do? And like in a circle, we just wrote a story together over the period of a week.
Yeah,
It's the most fun ever.
and that's an excellent idea that I'm totally going to steal. Thank you. See, you're such a giver.
and
I appreciate that.
and that idea will only cost you. No, I'm joking.
Yeah.
Um,
I'll pay you everything that I'm getting paid to work with these kids.
oh, it's so altruistic too, and at the same time, it's not because you get to experience the joy of storytelling, or telling from a different perspective.
Yeah, and I get to work on working with kids, and that's something that I hope eventually becomes a significant part of my life. I would love for this to be a regular, not just once a month thing, but like if I have the ability to, an opportunity to work with these kids regularly, I think it could be something really neat.
Yeah, I guess this is kind of another non sequitur. I'd like to get myself volunteering into a hospice program,
Hmm.
kind of just to hold hands with people on that last step. I mean, not
Hmm.
to tell stories or anything, but to hear them talk about their experiences. I was thinking about this today, kind of. It's been one of those kind of things I'd like to see myself do. I'm not exactly sure if there's story in that or if they'd even want to or able to actually be able
Hmm.
to experience that kind of therapeutic, let's read a story moment. But
Yeah, I
man,
know at the Children's Hospital, and this isn't what I would be doing, but I know this program exists. they do have hospice writers and creators who come in and help the kids create a final thing, and it bridges their eventual departure because it helps them acknowledge it and helps them create something too that they can leave behind, and that helps them kind of accept what's happening next. And it also,
Yeah.
it even though it obviously destroys any parent, they have that thing too. um,
Yeah. That's
I
interesting.
so it exists. I have no idea how you get into it. I honestly have no interest because I am a tender and fragile man, and I would not
I don't mean to
ever.
laugh at you. That's the way
No,
you put it.
yeah, I am. My
I
daughter like just started peeing in her pink little musical toilet, and I almost cried. Like it is,
oh
I am so overwhelmed with emotion, and specifically death. Like I just cannot do death. It is
oh
very,
man, I do it
very
all the
hard.
time. Are you on Reddit at all?
Yeah, but I don't comment that much, and I'm only on Reddit for the Magic the Gathering threads or the Destiny gaming threads, which
Okay.
in and themselves, many of them are garbage, but sometimes you get a unique perspective. Yeah,
I'm on Reddit for a lot of the writing threads. Prompt of the day is a big image thread. Fantasy writers, which is a thread that I participate in once a month for
yeah.
their challenges. But death is a primary focus in a lot of my fiction. So I try to examine it as closely as I possibly can. And one of the threads, unfortunately, that's out there right now is watch people die.
Oh my
I don't
God,
know, just yeah, oh my god, it's horrible, man.
that is a Reddit thread. That is definitely a Reddit thread. Holy sh!
I, yeah, it's horrible. But
It's
at the same
terrible.
time, as a species, we do it every day. We do it every year. We do it
Now,
eventually in our lives.
don't get me wrong. The idea of examining death and exploring death and writing about death, I do that almost in every other poem. But
Right?
there is a difference between writing about death and acknowledging it as this abstract end, and then you know, seeing someone like die. I mean, I was about to think
Well,
of a simile
let's
or something.
examine that then. When you write about death in one of your poems, what are you writing about?
So I have, for example, a poem that's called Knock Knock, and it is about jokes. But the start of the poem is effectively telling it's a poem that's addressed to my daughter, and it's basically saying that, you know, one day I will die, but you will still laugh. You will still know laughter, and it's a conversation that's taking place to her now. Obviously, as a 2-year-old, she doesn't get it, and it's just in poem format. But it's also contextualized by the fact that later on she may read this and see. And so for me, like the death there isn't even the point of the poem. It sort of just gives it weightiness, and it
Yeah.
is this more like this father daughter, like I will be gone, but even when I'm gone and you laugh, we will still be laughing together because together we are laughing now. So that's for me, that's a strategy with dealing with death. It's almost like a death, not death poem because it is focused more on joy and parenting than it is on, you know, 6 feet under and just being gone.
It's kind of beautiful. Without having actually read the poem, you're laughing with your daughter, and eventually you will die, but she will continue to be laughing because she is able to continue laughing even though you've
Yeah.
died. That's wonderful. How long is the poem?
It is so in pages, it's about 1 1/4, but there's some spacing stuff, so it's probably only like 26 lines.
So when you write a poem, you look at it in terms of lines and not word count.
Mm. So this is to go back to the phone thing. This is actually one of the great things and one of the interesting things about writing on the phone. Previously, I would write in Word or I would write in a notebook, and both of those formats have very clear page breaks. You're writing
Mhm.
on a page, you reach the end of the page, and then you go on to the next page. And the Notes app on the phone, there are no page breaks. It is just endless blank white. Um, and so I don't think of poems right now as I write them in terms of page length. And I'm always surprised whenever I paste them into Word for a submission. and I'm like, oh my god, that poem's 3 pages long. Like it. So I say pages just because everyone's familiar with it, but it is not how I think about poetry right now. Usually, I just kind of, I write a bunch and I try to cut down as small as I can and use as few words as I can, and go from there.
When I don't write poetry very often, but when I do, I didn't study it, honestly. I'm just kind of messing around. But I like how the words flow down the page,
Hmm.
kind of trickling, basically, like they're
Yeah.
falling from the top to the bottom. It's a shape thing for me more than it is like a word count. I just like how they look as they fall down to the bottom.
Hmm.
It isn't really a word. I mean, it's basically I've written a paragraph and I want the paragraph to fall apart in some kind of natural way,
Hmm.
like a rhythm or something of that nature.
Yeah, I mean, I think, um, I guess that example of the paragraph falling apart is very beautiful, and that's an excellent way to think about it. When I think kind of just about the idea of a poem going down the page, it more falls in line with what I think of as poetry in general, which is bricklaying. Like that's all poetry is. It's just the words are bricks, and you're arranging them in a way that'll take you from one place to another. And the creating and writing of that so-called brick pathway, it is arduous and it doesn't feel rewarding until you finally get to where you intended to go. So,
Mm.
mm.
Yeah. I mean, how do you get, do you listen to music when you write? Oh, when you're on the bus or the train
So
to block out the other
yes.
people? Yeah.
Uh, Thankfully, I live in Philadelphia, and people don't talk in the morning. My bus is at 6:30, so no one talks. When I work late and I take the bus and the subway home, then it's pretty loud, and then I don't write. I just edit. And when I edit, I tend to listen to Miles Davis, Kind of Blue. Um, it's for me, it's the perfect music to kind of let yourself slip into. But then you have these like really high and low notes that happen that kind of jar you. And for me, if the music distracts me enough from the piece, especially when it moves that much, that means that section of the piece is not strong enough, and I need to find a way to help it maintain my focus.
That's
Um,
interesting.
when I'm starting my day or I'm warming up, I'll tend to listen to Rachmaninoff, the Nocturnes, piano concertos, or the Bach cello concertos. And that's just more like it's excellent music. I was a clarinetist by training for 11 years, helped me get through college. And something about that, like, kind of just triggers this idea of creativity and kind of getting into a movement, both physically, mentally, and orally. And I tend to be very oral with everything that I write. So it helps me
Hmm.
kind of segue into the
By oral, do you mean you read it out loud to hear how it sounds, or?
no, that was the AU oral, like
Oh
the
no, please. What does that mean exactly?
aural. So like it's sounds, like the sounds of the actual music kind of help me focus when I write. And the way poetry often works is there's kind of meeting and resonance happening on the page, or in the mouth too, with consonants and vowels and rhythm and how they interact. That component of poetry where it's almost like music is really important to me.
Hmm, it's interesting. So poetry, music, lyrics, they all kind of go together.
Yeah, I don't know
Do
if
you,
that's interesting, but yeah, that's definitely
you're talking to somebody
my
who'd never
MO.
studied any of that. I don't know
Yeah.
anything about music. I don't listen to music either.
Oh. Oh.
Not at all. I mean, when I write in the morning, I plug in like a 6 hour block of just kind of this tonal rain cloud stuff that I turn down as soft as I possibly can so I barely hear it.
Huh.
I plug into a story and just focus on it and just boom, I just go.
See, I think that's
I hardly
amazing.
listen to anything.
I think that's amazing. Not just being able to focus and hone in on the story, but doing it for 6 hours. Like I can't. If I write, especially when I was
Well, no,
writing.
I'm saying the block of music is 6 hours.
Oh, you're not writing
I
for
wish
six
I had
hours.
6 hours. No, man, I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and I have to get my wife and kids up at like 5:30.
Oh my,
I don't have
you.
6 hour
Oh,
block to do anything.
jeez, man, you deserve a medal. Not a cold.
I do. Where is it? I'll take it. Where's my medal? No, it's interesting though. I mean, but you are writing about death, and it is sad. And when you do pass, and your daughter finds that poem, she's not gonna laugh for a while. She's gonna cry. You
Mhm.
know, hard. And you're right though. Eventually, she will learn to laugh again. But every time she reads that poem, she's gonna cry.
I mean, I hope not. But we will see. I won't see.
You won't see.
Someone will. Uh,
I mean, depending on what death is. I mean, just it's very fascinating to me. It's a story. When I take the train or the bus or I'm at public
mhm.
transportation and I'm standing on the platform, I can't help but stare at the people around me. You know, I want to watch them. I always listen to podcasts constantly. I have a little bit of tinnitus, so I
Oh,
have
okay.
to
That's rough.
block that crap out. I hate it
Yeah,
so
yeah,
much. It's like this
yeah.
high pitched whine in my ear. Thank you,
Yep.
United States Army.
Yeah.
Thank you, loud ass shit that's always been in my ear. Why I can't stand music.
Yeah. That no,
Who
that makes a
knows?
lot of
But
sense.
anyway,
My buddy Mike has tinnitus, and yeah, that is a huge struggle. I cannot fathom it, and just the day to day like dealing with that, it's tremendous. I'm so sorry.
especially when I'm
Oh
exhausted. If
yeah.
I'm exhausted in a really, really quiet room and it's like it is so loud,
Well, I mean, there's
everything it's like humming in the air.
you got to think about it like you even if you are subconsciously doing it, you're still like focusing some energy on blocking out that ringing, and that's exhausting. I mean, to be
Yeah.
able to have to do something cognitively, whether you're doing it consciously or not, all day, that's so taxing.
So I spend all my day out in the world with earbuds in, listening
Yeah.
to a podcast, just people blabbing in my ear. Sometimes I pay attention to them, and sometimes I was constantly making up
Mhm.
stories by people. So I mean, death is there constantly lurking in terms of like looking at people, wondering, what their life is going to be like. And
Yeah.
if you read the news or anything, death is happening in the news constantly.
Well,
I mean, we just had a conversation on Twitter talking about, kids having, confrontations with Nazis on campuses.
well, that's not
Uh,
entirely that is happening, but that was such an interesting conversation to me because it was like a dean or someone in England who doesn't really have a bead on American politics and he was talking about how like there's the downfall of education and young people today because they're not willing to engage in conversations with people who have different opinions than them, which is so disingenuous. Like that guy was talking out his ass. He did not even care about American politics. He had no interest in understanding how university campuses work and free speech and stuff in the United States. All he wanted to say was that young people aren't as strong today as I was when I was their age. He wouldn't ever have the balls to come out and say that, but that's all he meant. He was being incredibly derisive, and he couldn't back anything up what he was saying. Like at one point, I think he said something about how Plato would like the idea of students engaging with Nazis on college campuses. And I'm like, dude, man, there's a forest fire of smoke you're trying to blow up my ass. Like this is not a serious conversation. Our conversation was much more interesting and just a good bandying back and forth. But what spurred that conversation irritated me
I,
for
I
days.
don't know. Do you think that Nazis would hurt kids on campus? I mean, would it be a giant band of Nazis versus a giant band of students just screaming at each other?
So, I mean,
Was that your imagination?
no.
Was that
So
what was happening on your side?
my example is the Milo Yiannopoulos, whatever.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so he was invited on his hate tour to a college campus, and uh,
Have you heard him speak? He is the craziest guy. He has
he's
like,
no he's
if you say the dress is pink, he's gonna tell you what's a different color
mhm.
just to troll the crap out of you. He's like the most. What
Yeah,
is the term? I mean,
he's a negative calorie of a human being. He's like angry celery. Like you eat it and
it's so
you
funny.
understand that you've lost something inside. And but again, you're filled with this awful roughage. He is an awful person. Um when he wasn't that big, he used to tweet, or he would like maybe tweeted one or two angry things at me, and I was like, Jesus fuck.
He's off Twitter.
He's
I mean, I
off
think he
Twitter.
got
This
kicked
is
off.
when I first got onto Twitter again after my writing hiatus. Gamergate was going on, and that was just a whole morass of stuff I don't even want to get into. But anyways, going back to him, he did a speech. I forget where and like what Midwestern state, but he effectively identified a trans student in the audience and spent the entire 2 hours of his talk making fun of this person. And this is kind of what I mean. That's an extreme example, but it's not. When you invite these people onto campus within the context of we're going to have an intellectually honest conversation and debate, that's not what they're coming there to do. They're just coming there to spread an agenda, and they have no interest in altruistic, genuine exchange of ideas. So this whole framework of I am an intelligent, liberal human being who can engage with any idea and help someone who disagrees with me or has a different opinion. I can help them sort of either align themselves with me or at least see where I'm coming from, and then I could see where they're coming from. But that assumes a genuine baseline of understanding that we are human beings, we can move forward with any sort of intellectual conversation. And when another party is not interested in that, you can't have that. This is not a thing that happens. So when your baseline,
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. When
right,
you have Nazis, this just stupid term. Every time anybody says the word Nazi, I immediately think of Indiana Jones. I
oh,
just
I
immediately
think of
think there's going to
Godwin,
be
yeah.
Indiana Jones with a bullwhip. I mean, like, such a dumb term.
So, but
It's so
it's
dumb.
it is valuable in the sense of that there are Nazis that are out and
Yeah.
about now. But you are also right, like it is overused. Even in the context of there actually being Nazis out and about, like it is almost cheapened. It's like this idea that it's a word that has edges, and then you talk about it, and you talk about Nazis, you're having a very sharp conversation, but its overuse has kind of dulled those edges to the point where you think they don't exist. But obviously they do, and obviously like when you,
I think it's better to say, what are these people? Who are these people? Where
I
do
don't
they
know.
come from? Let's decide what definition the term is actually. What
I think that's a help.
term are
That
we
might
applying to the definition?
that might be a
You
helpful
know,
conversation to have with someone who isn't a Nazi. Um, I don't know how fruitful that would be because I think we're still in this phase of there are white supremacists and there are people who couch their entire perspective in ignorance and hate. And there's no positive result of a mutual exchange
the
with those
sad thing is
people.
they're not all white supremacists, though. There are other all sides that couch themselves in hate too.
Well, but I mean, I think you could talk about any sort of side that couches himself in hate, but within the conversation that we were talking about, it was a very specific thing about white men being invited to a campus to spread their agenda. And part of the conversation too, which I kept trying to bring back to this guy, was like when you bring those individuals onto a campus, you equivalent like you're basically bringing them into someone's home because students live on campus. And
Yeah,
furthermore, you're utilizing resources that they've given to campuses with trust, you know, to help them learn, to help them grow
yeah.
as individuals. And again, like the idea that you would give money to someone who then invites so-called Nazis or a Milo who's just going to spend 2 hours making fun of a trans student, like one of your friends, like you're not getting anything out of that. So it's a huge waste of resources. It's a huge waste of time. No intellectual thing is exchanged. The only thing you really learn is that certain universities are so mired in their own like intellectual pompous assery that they'll never truly appreciate your perspective, and they've never really thought about you and your needs as a student and a learner, beyond the fact of taking your money and making you sign up for Comp 101 or something.
I don't know. I think anti-intellectualism, you actually do get something out of it. You know what I mean?
Well,
I don't know.
I
I don't
think
want them there either, though. At the end of the day, I
so.
really think that I think that Ian, I would agree. Would you agree? You aren't a Trump supporter, I would imagine. I would assume that you are more my ilk and more of the middle ground to the left.
No, no,
probably politically.
I am not a Trump supporter, and I am not even a middle ground. I am left. I am not hard left because I think the leftist group of liberals has a separate agenda for me. But I'm
Are you
very
talking about
progressive.
the Bernie bros?
No, because I don't think Bernie Bros are left. I think they have a lot of leftist tendencies, but I think there's also like what 10% of Bernie Bros or something I read somewhere voted for Trump.
I don't know.
Uh,
I would have voted for him if they hadn't shifted that election
so Bernie,
terribly.
but the thing about Bernie that I dislike, and Bernie Bros don't ever want to admit, but he's willing to shift his politics to win and to get votes, but he presents himself as this very genuine, like, no, I'm totally with you. But then, oh yeah, we need to let the senator win, even though she doesn't stand with me or stand for things that I believe in, and she might throw women under the bus because she's pro-life, or I don't know. Like he's just got a lot of bombastic chicanery associated with him, and I just feel like there's a lot of reactionary politics with the Bernie brothers, and I just I don't care about the things that they're reacting to. Like I'm totally aware of how mediocre to bad of a candidate Hillary Clinton was. Like
Yeah.
I don't think there's a Hillary Clinton supporter out there who believes that she's this perfect godsend that
Manhattan
is going to
politics
solve
were 100% behind her,
all the
though.
problems for.
I did not meet anybody in New York City that wasn't like, oh, HRC all the way, and you couldn't even say anything to them without them, getting mad at you.
Well, I mean,
They were
I think
100% behind her.
The Hillary Clinton supporters, they knew what was at stake the most, and everyone else sort of just chose to not acknowledge that.
Yeah.
And you know what? As a result, we've got the worst president in American history.
I don't think it's going to get better, honestly. We had the worst political field you could possibly imagine, and it's not going to get better. I don't see anybody being better than what we had in 2016. I can't even think of a candidate that's going
Yeah,
to face
I don't know.
Trump in 20.
I honestly am so exhausted. Uh,
You can't though, man. How old are you? You're younger than me. You have to be younger than me.
no, I'm exhausted with the prospects of the future because the president is so loud, and like I don't
The
know.
opposition is loud too. I mean, it's like the entire situation is loud. I'm afraid to say anything to anybody because you just get beat down with these horrible words like Nazi or oh God. I mean, that's the cream of the
No,
crop.
but
I mean, they're just so
you
bad.
did not think that I was beating you down when I was
No, no,
bandying
no,
around
no, no, no.
Nazi. Like that's
I
not.
wouldn't have said anything to you if I
Yeah,
thought
yeah,
you were
yeah.
one of
No,
those people.
I think
I don't talk to people like that.
right. I think
I don't
it's all
talk to people.
about it's just all about how you engage with people, and
I don't
like
engage with politics on Twitter at all. I just don't do it
yeah, it's
at
generally
all.
not worth it. Some obviously like whenever Trump does something egregious and like it's necessary to spread the word, like or for example this awful healthcare initiative that once again is trying to be rammed through, like you want to spread as much information as you can, and even though I have a modest amount of followers, like you want to get that out there and go on with that, but in general, yeah, like the Bernie brothers are really reactionary, and and the Trump supporters are just inane, and
Horrible.
they'll just dogpile.
Yeah.
The ardent Hillary supporters, obviously they have, and I agree because I too have this a chip on their shoulder, and it's really hard to figure out how you can have a productive conversation. But I think if you're willing to, and like you find people who are willing to, you can have a great conversation. Every time I talk to a supporter of any kind that's not a Trump supporter, I learn something new. Um, the Trump supporters that I've talked to they feel terrible, and they don't actually want to talk about him. They're like they're owning their mistake, like, but they aren't interested in going beyond like, yeah, he's not doing what I thought he would do, and whatever. That's his
The passive
politics.
conversations that I've listened to, they have admitted why the situation has occurred the way it did because our political system is messed up. We need something to change. The lobbyists that are influencing the congressmen the Congress, the Hill, the House, the Senate, they need to go away. There's too much money in politics. And America knows this. The
I mean,
heartland is being gutted. I mean, we just need different. America is dying.
I don't know.
I mean, it's
I
getting
mean,
gutted.
I sort of I disagree with that. Like, I don't think I think that is a problem, but I think the first problem is that
You're from Houston, Texas.
yeah, from Houston, Texas. I think the first
Have you driven home?
yes,
Have you been through Tennessee? Gotten
yeah.
off 40 at all in the middle of Tennessee, Kentucky?
All right, so let me finish my conversation. Let me finish my point. I think the biggest issue with American politics is they don't have any sort of like embedded self-reflection, like embedded, I'm voting for this and these are the implications that will come as a result. And my follow-up point with that, which is was going to be that the American heartland as a result is already gutted.
Yeah.
It's already this. I mean, God, like I was in Cincinnati recently, and
Yeah.
and
It's
wow,
rust. Empty.
right? Like
Nothing there.
it's such a good bones town. Like there's such a and there's parts of the city that are fantastic, but I mean, even going outside of the city and that area, like it's definitely a part of the heartland that's like you could build a whole great tech industry there. Like real estate is
Yeah.
cheap. There are workers. They're ready to work. There's a population that support there. There's a good infrastructure in the city. It's unique. It's got those rivers. You know, it's a good
It's funny,
spot.
man. You could
But
flip on the Cincinnati Bengals game on Sunday and the just crowded stadium. Where the hell those people come from?
yeah, well, I mean, they pile in from Kentucky, right?
I guess.
One of the weirdest experiences in my life was going to Cincinnati. I was we went like just bar hopping in Cincinnati, and then we were looking for an all night diner, and everything closed down, I think at 1 or 2, and we found one, and it was like this old fishmonger diner. We walk in, and it's that old school like circle bar stool around the waiter, cook, chef, maitre d. It's just filled at 3 o'clock in the morning with nothing but like smoking old guys, and then we're like, okay, this is very Stephen Kingy, but I dig it. And we hook a left to the dining area, and we sit down next to casino strippers. The whole dining area is filled with nothing but casino strippers who are all like completely drunk or messed up on drugs. And
Drugs, probably, and drunk.
yeah, and
Probably both.
very very chatty, very nice, and you could tell like the cliche of drugs, like the guy who's totally geeked out on cocaine would not stop talking about how rich he
Mhm.
was, and the girl who was just drunk kept slurring her speech and telling me I was pretty, and
Pretty.
the girls dressed up in like latex gladiator gear were on Molly, and they were just cuddling in the corner. It was just this weird like, where am I? And
Yeah.
and that's what I remember of Cincinnati. There you go.
It's stripped. I mean, geez, man,
Yeah,
it's out
God,
west too.
yeah.
There's like nothing there.
It's not that far from New York if you think about it. Like
No, it's like 12 hours away.
yeah, it's totally accessible. And
Do
again,
it up here.
yeah.
Um, we I spend a lot of my time in Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you go out of the city, go over the George Washington Bridge.
Right.
There is lots of urban buildup, lots of
Yep.
urban blight. You
Yep.
drive an hour outside of that, and Jersey just starts dying away. And that's basically the rest of America. Just these little towns that just have a gas station. That's it. Where are the people? Where are the people? What happened to all those dudes and all those moms and dads who lost their houses in the housing market? You know, who got kicked out by the banks? Where'd they go? They're
You know
50,
what?
60 years old. Their moms and dads are
I,
dead already. What happened to them? Did they blow their brains out? Are they living under a bridge right now? Are they living with their kids?
wow, that's
I
dark turns.
well,
You're touching on death. So if you want to talk about blowing your
I
brains
touch it.
out,
I touch on death. I think about this
let's do
country
it.
because it is dying. It feels like it doesn't feel like it's
Here's an
prospering.
example. My dad refinanced his mortgage before the housing crisis, and then the housing crisis happened, and the company that refinanced his mortgage sold it to the bank, and the bank basically came around and said, "We own your house. You have to give it to us or get out or give us this amount of money. And my dad was like, prove it. Show me the deed. And the bank got swindled, and they never actually had paperwork. They had financial transactions showing that they had paid this mortgage broker money, but they couldn't actually prove they owned the house. And so my dad got into this legal battle for 7 years with them, and then they finally were like, okay, we absolve all of your debt, and we don't want you to give us anything. We just want you to leave. And what did he do? He moved up north into the house of a home of a man who had blown his brains out. And it was super cheap because no one wanted to live there. So there's your full story. Of everything you just said was entirely relevant to my personal life in a weird.
It's very, very interesting. So there was this man who was smart enough to do research, and there was a man who was not smart enough to do the research, or couldn't do the research, or the research didn't pan out for him.
I mean, I guess
it's sad.
It is. I think even though it seems like it's a broad sort of perspective regarding the entirety of America. Uh-oh. Did I lose you?
I dropped my earbud.
Okay. Yeah, I think, I mean, I didn't think we'd go into politics, but I do think that there is a significant, issue with how we're engaging with every sort of aspect of the central area of America. I do also think, though, that kind of, I think people are aware of needing to engage with Middle America and needing to like kind of hear their perspective. But I almost think it's too much too. Like, I'm really tired of hearing or reading, New York Times pieces about interviewing Trump supporters who are living in these dying towns who are still, their town is still dying. Like,
well, you can ask why do they still live there, but then you could also ask why shouldn't they still live
question. There? Yeah, that's a super privileged
right. I mean, why shouldn't they live there?
The reason
they can live wherever the hell they want. There's 370 million people in this country, right? There are 370 million people in this country, but if you ever driven across it, you're like, damn, there's a lot of room. There's so much room. I've read once that you could move everybody in this world to this country and give them an acre of land, and the world would be empty, and we'd all live here perfectly fine. We have such a gigantic place.
I mean, so I don't think, to speak to your point, I don't think you could just move. I mean, the only reason I lived in Brooklyn after I got my MFA was because I could afford a down payment on an apartment if I split it, and it was super cheap, and it was out in Bushwick. And it was like right by the live chicken store that was next to the Santeria restaurant.
Horrible.
Right? It was like a $300 freaking deposit. Like, I could afford that and cobble together.
Would you want to live there though? That's the thing.
I did want to live there, but I had no choice. Like, what was I going to do? I had like maybe $400 in my bank account, and that's not enough to move home. My parents my mom was not working, and my dad, I don't think he was working, or he's barely getting by. I had no outs, and I just, wherever the money could go, like, I had a roommate who could afford paying a little bit more rent, and so I moved in with him, and I lived in Bushwick, and that was it. Those were my only options. There was nothing I could have done to move out without throwing myself into further debt, which I did not want to do because I was like so deep in the hole. So I don't think the option to move is there.
I understand. I first moved to this city. I worked at a hostel, work exchange, with 8 other people in a room.
Yeah, my first job
in Upper West Side in Manhattan, and then in the East Village. I mean, I had prime real estate, but I had to share a room with 8 other people.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And I had to do 24 hours on a desk down the reception. I met some freaking fantastic people, but I had no time.
Yeah.
I had worked 64 hours a week.
Yeah,
I had to bust my ass, and still I had no money.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
You know what I mean?
My first job was
I had one bad conversation with a woman in Jamaica, and I defaulted on my student loans.
Yeah.
That's all it took, was one bad conversation. I was like less than a year out of college, and my loans were defaulted over one bad conversation.
No, I mean,
it's
I hear you. Like, my first job was I worked at Housing Works, and I did that Sunday to Thursday. And then Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday night, I bartended or bar backed, and then I went back to work Sunday.
Yeah, it's
barely
horrible.
got by.
I mean, that's the life of a 20-year-old living in New York City,
Yeah,
right? I mean,
we
you
did
barely
worse
put
than
enough
joy.
together, and you're
Like, why are
poor,
you there? Yeah, why are you there? Living off $2
and you
chuck
live 2 hours away from anything cool,
yeah.
and you come home drunk, throwing up on the train, hoping that nobody rolls you.
Oh yeah. I got roofied once, and man, that was
Did you?
yeah. I got roofied after hours and ended up on the L train, and I got on the train like around 3:30, and I came to right outside of my stop, and walked out of the subway, and it was 11 o'clock in the morning. Like I had just
I think I got roofied once too.
yeah, I blacked out for 8 hours. It's awful. I mean, oh, disgusting.
I think I knew I got roofied though.
Oh,
I was like, all of a sudden, I drank like a couple drinks with this dude. He ended
yeah.
up getting choked to death in San Francisco.
Whoa!
That's what I heard. I think he got. Somebody told me he died in a bathroom stall. Dude was like crazy. He'd come home drunk every single night. He's like one of those gay dudes that partied every single night, and he wanted to take me and this other dude down to the West Village to party at a club. I was like, okay, whatever. And we drank some shots. And by the time I finished the shot and walked 7 floors down, I was so inebriated, I couldn't even put one foot in front of the other.
That is exactly
Nope.
what happened to me. Like it was. I had 2 beers, and after my second beer, my buddy was like, "You don't look all right," and I was like, "I'm fine." And he turned around and walked down the subway stairs. I took 3 steps and collapsed. And it was.
Yeah.
It was
I turned around, man. I went back upstairs. I woke up in a puddle of my own urine.
Oh wow!
In my bed, I woke up in a puddle of my own urine.
Oh,
I was so embarrassed. I was like, "Whoo! I think something might have happened to me last night, and I'm so happy it's this and not something worse."
I'm so happy. Yeah, I'm so happy you didn't die.
Right? Or anything else. I mean, this is what I'm happy happened.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, man, New York, Philadelphia. What? I mean, we could talk all night about like this. This is America. These are the experiences that you're supposed to have. I mean, that's why we write. And you're not just a poet, though. You've written how many books? Like fiction books?
Oh, I haven't. I mean, I've written some books, and I have not published any of them.
You've never gone the route of self-publishing?
No, I've been tempted, and so just in terms of the number of novels I've written, I guess 4.
Why haven't you gotten them out there? Have you ever tried to like get them traditionally published or
so you know what
get
it is?
representation?
I always get representation, or I always try to get representation, and every single novel that I've written has gotten that one bite. Like I want to review your full manuscript. I want to see how you write, and I want to go about that, right? Like I've gotten that really, and I don't know if it is because I just write a great chapter 1 and a great query letter, but I tend to get a lot of requests for fulls and like full manuscripts, and I did that for years, and it never came to fruition, and kind of.
Did they ever give you like a reason why, or you just sent it out there they black holed it?
Yeah, I mean, usually what would happen is the agent would request for the full, and they would be like, you know what, this is not for me. There's some interesting stuff, but it just doesn't work out. Like the character progression doesn't work out, or I'm not 100% with the ending.
You called it the character percussion, like a drum
progression. Sorry.
Oh, progression. Okay,
Yeah.
I was like percussion. That's nice. I like that.
Yeah, that's good.
Like I've never heard of it before. I was like, that actually makes sense.
I had an agent who was also published, solicited, and she said there was like too much passive voice, which really pissed me off because I looked through the manuscript and there were 17 instances of passive voice across 324 pages. And,
did you ever ask her to tell you what the hell she meant?
No, you don't. When someone says no, and here's why, there's no fruitful conversation that can happen afterward. You obviously
just comes off as argumentative, huh?
Right. Like it just comes off as not productive, and then agents talk to each other, and you just don't want to be that guy. When someone says no, if you ever respond, it is just thank you, and that's across all levels. And ultimately it wasn't a like physical energy, but there was an emotional energy to, going up and being like, okay, uh, this person is accepting the full. I could be really excited about this. This is very rare to even have someone that interested in the manuscript, and then to have that deflation of them being rejected and have that happen multiple times across multiple manuscripts. It was very bruising. And what happened too, as a result of years of going through this process, was that I realized, you know, 3 years into submitting a novel, I would like really do that reread and really kind of get back into it and see if I could fix anything or what might have been the issue. I started to realize that the stuff that I was writing 3 years after the novel was better than the novel. And like I hadn't hit that point where my writing, my fiction writing, was strong enough to actually sustain a narrative over 75,000 words.
How could
And
you determine that though,
I mean,
as
because
the artist?
it's just relative. Like you see what you're doing now, and you see how it compares to what you did then, and it's just, if you're, at least if you're me, I feel stronger about the stuff that I'm writing now over the stuff that I was even writing 6 months ago.
I can
And
100% say that the stuff I'm writing right now is better than what I wrote yesterday. Oops. You back? Todd? Lou? Todd? 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 Hey.
hey, I lost you there.
Yeah, you lost me. You're back
All
now,
right.
though.
You said
I was just saying, I can 100% tell you that the stuff that I'm writing right now is better than the stuff that I was writing yesterday. In fact, the novel that I went ahead and threw up on Amazon because, fuck all the agents in the entire world who black holed me, is
wow.
horrible.
Well, then take it down.
I mean,
Why don't have bad writing of yours out there? Like,
I don't know. I don't know if it's bad or not. I mean, I can't get anybody to read it or buy it, but I don't know. It's and the novel that I'm writing right now, I have no clue. Don't you get lost in it? I mean, what were the novels that you were writing about?
So first off, just a heads up.
Oh, and plus my wife likes it, and my wife's friend liked it, so it's gotta be good. So,
right.
there.
Just a heads up. My wife just came back from going out. So if there's any background noise, just that's why.
Okay.
So the first novel that I wrote was about a girl who travels to the world of forgotten things, and effectively she has a whiny younger brother, and she finds a way to send him to this world, and then her parents feel really sad and they can't figure out why, because they've forgotten their son, and she goes into this world to save him. And it's sort of like an Alice in Wonderland meets more like a Neil Gaiman Coraline twist. But like it didn't work because it was a little plotting. It was middle grade, but it was like an 88,000 word novel. So
wow. Okay. Middle grade is like 8 to 14 years old or something.
yeah, like usually those novels clock in under 70, but I didn't know that at the time. And originally it was like 112,000 words, and I just caught a ton of stuff. And I think the idea is strong, and I think if I reworked it, it would be really great. But I just
It's a neat idea. How old were you when you wrote it?
I started writing it when I was 26, I think. Yeah, 26, 27, and I finished it when I was 28.
And you can't rewrite it you can't rewrite it to something more or better. You think they just shelve it and move on to the next thing?
I think, yes, I think I could rewrite it, but yes, I think actually the better thing to do right now is to shelve it and move on to another thing. I think it's a story that's really special to me. And
you know what I find interesting though is you could sell it to me with what you just said. What's the next novel about? Like that elevator spiel that you just gave me, I couldn't do that with my 70,000 word novel that I have on Amazon right now.
well,
I couldn't tell you what the damn thing's about.
That's one of the things that like I spent years trying to figure out what it is that takes to write a good novel, and I think it's one of the reasons why my query letters tend to get bites, because first, not in addition to knowing like how to do that elevator pitch, I also like research the hell, spend like 4 to 8 hours per agent researching them to identify how I could best appeal to their interests. And like reading interviews, reading books that they represent, like it's I'm very invested in the process. So the next book was about a kid who has a balloon for a head, and
oh my god, I love these. Do you tend to write magical realism? Is that your thing?
I tend to write things that are strange, and like I tend to have strange ideas. And
because I love that idea right now. Tell me more about the kid with the balloon for a head. I want.
He's really sad, and he can't go to school because his mom's worried that someone's going to pop his head. But she has to get a job because there's a drought in the small Texas town where they live, and so Eddie gets to finally go to school, and he meets a girl who knows why there's a drought and knows how to fix it, and they go on an adventures in the sky to try and fix the drought. And it's this push pull of Eddie doesn't want to fix the drought because he gets to go to school and now he has his friend, and but at the same time, like he knows it's the right thing to do, and even if he fixes the weather, he'll have to go back home and be homeschooled. He goes on these adventures in the sky to figure out how to fix the weather.
Wow. And I have this is my floor. Go ahead and send me that manuscript. Oh, this is beautiful, man. That's really succinct and nicely done. That's really well told in terms of the elevator spiel that you just gave me.
It is so strange though. And that's the one novel that I've written that I've never had any bites.
Really?
Yeah,
that's nicely done.
It's so people, I don't know, like it's actually my favorite that I've written, and it is not well received by agents. The other two, one was about a girl who finds out that she's half hellhound, and and she ends up being a monster hunter because she's like a vampire that has to eat monsters to live. But she's really awkward, so she feels really weird about it. And the other one is a novel about a guy who lives in this dystopia where the punishment there is if you are, instead of being put into prison, you're optically viewed by the society and members of the society who aren't in prison, kind of like a blur. And the society is allowed to punish you and do whatever they want to you.
Interesting. Black Mirror kind of did something similar the first season with what's his name from Batman, Mad Men.
Yeah, you are not the first person to say that to me, and that's why I don't shop that novel around. I didn't watch Black Mirror, but the idea was there. Yeah. I watched the first couple of episodes, and I have not watched it since I recommended it to my father-in-law, and he watched the first episode and has not liked me since.
Has not liked? Oh my god!
That's kidding. I'm kidding. But the first episode is really intense.
The first episode is horribly hard to watch.
Oh my god! It is. I'm literally like I'm rubbing my hands and sweating right now thinking about that first episode.
Oh my god, I love Black Mirror, but yeah, that was the worst one to watch. It definitely went easier from that point, but that first episode is really tough.
He's only seen the first episode, and he watched it based on my recommendation. Actually, before I had seen it, one of my good friends, one of my best friends, who has excellent taste, recommended it to me, and so my father-in-law asked me what I was watching. or if I was watching anything interesting, and I was like, you know what, I heard about the show Black Mirror, you should check it out. Because he likes sci-fi, fantasy, action, weird stuff too, and he watched it, and I've I still feel terrible about recommending it to him because I had no idea what he was getting into, and he trusted me.
Well, thank God they didn't get worse from there. You know what I mean?
Right,
Like, oh, this is the easiest episode to watch. They just get worse from this point. Nope, that was the worst one.
No, we don't talk about it anymore.
Well, let me guess. Every agent wanted to see your third novel, right? Every one of them wanted to read your third one.
Yeah, every one of them wanted to read the one about the girl who was half hellhound. Every one of them, and
your least favorite, I gather.
Yeah, I think there's a story there. I love the idea of a vampire, like a character who has to feed off of other characters or other creatures, like a vampire, but instead of it being a monster hunting humans, it is a monster hunting monsters, sort of like a Dexter of vampires. I think that's a cool idea. I think the character art, how I have it framed, because I use a lot of like biblical mythology and things like that. I really steeped it in this sort of almost very Judeo-Christian mythology. I think it didn't serve the novel, and I think it made it too like there were too many breaks where I had to just like dump exposition to be like, okay, this is actually why this is happening. And
I like I'm an expert or anything, but I think you should shop those first few novels directly to publishers.
I mean, thank you. I haven't read them in years. I know my friends. I have a small handful of beta readers, and they love the balloon one. They think it's great, and I haven't.
It sounds incredibly interesting to me.
Well, maybe I'll take a gander. Thank you.
So, the thing that I want to ask you about the most is how the hell did you get a story into Asimov?
So not a story, a poem. No, not a story, a poem.
Oh, never mind now.
Yeah, no, you should delete this whole podcast.
I am really. It's an hour and 13 minutes. I'm done. What a waste. What a waste.
I'm gonna wake up my kid. I'm laughing.
My God, what a waste of time. No, so I didn't know Asimov did poems.
Yeah, I didn't either. And then obviously like. So I love fantasy. I think fantasy and science fiction are amazing, and I think it's really unfortunate that usually that type of stuff, when it's couched in literary fiction, or actually any type of literary writing, it's always magical realism or some bullshit. And and I think that was a big deterrent for me for kind of entering the literary community, because I assumed that my interest in that weird stuff, like my D&D background, my Magic the Gathering background, my gaming background, things that are very central to what I do to have fun, I just assumed wouldn't be well received in the literary world. I was so wrong.
Yeah, you are. That's totally a misconception.
Wrong. And I didn't realize this until I started like getting back onto Twitter and realizing that I was being a total square. And I was reacting to other squares who had tried to dictate what a writer's interest should be. And so I just started like going through the old like Asimov magazines, fantasy and science fiction, like just going through them. And yeah, there's some poems. And I wrote a persona poem from the perspective of a very famous monster or a monster creature in science fiction. And I don't want to spoil it because I think it's a really cool idea. And I don't know when this poem is going to come out, but the contract has been signed for months and I'm waiting. But I honestly like
really cool.
I wrote this poem and it was a stumper. I wrote it and I was like, oh, this is good. And then like with poetry, you kind of try to separate yourself from the poem because you always love it when it first comes out. And I went back to it, made some changes, but overall it stayed intact. And I sent it to Asimov's, and I waited for 4 months, and they didn't get back to me. And with genre submissions, I don't know if you submit to journals, but with genre submissions in like the fantasy science fiction realm, they kind of like say you're not supposed to submit it simultaneously, and the trade-off for that is that they tend to respond very quickly. And Asimov's, obviously I sent it to them. It was an exclusive submission. They didn't get back to me. I was like, what's the deal? I wrote them at the 4-month mark, and they were like, this is great. We'll accept it. Here we go. And suddenly I have a poem in the best science fiction magazine in the world. Honestly, like, so your question was, how did it happen? Like, I have no idea.
Slowly.
Very, very slowly. And I attribute most of my success to a love of writing and luck. And I think that that poem, or
I don't know, man, change that luck to talent, a love of writing and talent, because that's where it's at. It sounds like you have a lot of both, a love of writing and a lot of talent. Of the, let's go back to where you were talking about before, about the squares telling you what you should be writing, what you shouldn't be writing. It's very interesting. I mean, going through like a creative writing program, you don't really get an opportunity to really explore the various genres. I mean, they don't really tell you what to write, but obviously you're writing more literary fiction. You know, you're exploring the human condition or something along those lines. And my novel is kind of literary fiction, you know, the one that I have on Amazon that's being ignored. And just recently, at the beginning of this year, maybe a year ago, I just started writing genre fiction, and I've kind of really fallen in love with it in terms of science fiction and fantasy, just writing a lot of it, just writing as much as I possibly could and can. And it's like kind of turned everything around a lot. I found a voice that I didn't know kind of existed.
Yeah, I think genre fiction in general, it gives you opportunities that literary fiction doesn't. It allows you to move forward where with literary fiction, I feel like you would hesitate, and that's definitely a generalization. And there are definitely, like, I say that, and there are writers like freaking Sarah Gailey and Ken Liu, like, and Alyssa Wong, like freaking even, I don't know, like Chuck Wendig, like there are excellent like DJ Older, like there are just so many writers of genre that write way better than a lot of the genre fiction that I read, or a lot of the non-genre, like so-called literary fiction that I read in journals. And and they do it both embracing the freedom that genre fiction gives you, but also just, you know, having that basic, like, here's the structure, here's how everything's happening, and then surprising you. I don't know if you read, like,
I'm going to tell you a story, and I'm going to tell you a story the way that, no, I'm just saying, I'm going to tell you a story, and I'm going to tell it however I feel like telling it. And if it has monsters in it, it's going to have monsters in it. If it's going to have, you know, a fight with a god, it's going to have a fight with a god.
Right, yeah.
And if it's going to have a sword, it's going to have a sword in it. If it's going to have magic, it's going to have magic. And I don't really care.
What did I just read? I just read something. And I think it won the Locust Award. It had a fight with a god in it. And was like this old lady who was like a rabbit god. And she totally housed this like old school, you know, god from the north. And I had no idea that's where the story was going. And it was so badass. And you could never do that in so-called genre fiction.
Yeah.
I kind of hate lit fic. And I kind of hate lit fic too, because I feel like lit fic is just like, it's almost if you could create a genre out of loneliness, like, okay, that's lit fic. Like, you are unique, but everyone gets it. Like, I don't know.
I mean, you have to have a touch of, you have to have a sense of the human too, though. You have to be able to sense the soul. You have to be able to know what it feels like to stub your toe. I mean, you have to have a sense of humanity, being alive.
There is no type of story that has more of a sense of humanity than a monster story, because all monsters are inversions of humanity. Like, that is, you don't have monster stories in lit fic. Like, Jekyll and Hyde is an example. Oh my God, Frankenstein, right? Like, these are two quintessential monster stories that are considered lit fic, but they are just genre stories where they show you, here are these monsters and the monster is you. I mean, it's not the whole.
Well, think about Frankenstein. I just did I do another podcast called Mirage, where I speculate on speculative fiction with other authors. And we did an episode on Mary Shelley, and when she
Hmm.
wrote Frankenstein, there was no such thing as genre fiction. She was writing a fiction story because that's what science was asking the questions on that at that
Yeah,
particular
yeah, yeah.
time. Could you resurrect dead flesh? Could you transplant the brain? Could you blah blah blah? I mean, these weren't questions of science fiction. This was questions of, science of the day, and
Well, and she
that was
just had
literary.
like a stillborn baby too. She was drunk.
Oh my God, she had so much death.
Oh, you talk
She
about
had so much death in her life.
didn't she have
She killed her mother.
like she
I mean,
shot?
she killed her mother crawling out of the womb. I mean, she had
Is there anyone more goth than Mary Shelley, right?
right.
Like seriously.
her own husband died like right around that same time frame.
No,
I
didn't she
mean,
keep Percy's heart like wrapped in wax paper in a drawer? Like,
I did not read that, but I mean, honestly, I would not put it past her. The woman was absolutely probably insane with death.
oh, that she was so gnarly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll never hit that goth. I'll never hit that. Not that I ever want to, but like, were I to, I will be curbed by how that's what
You're surrounded by life. You're not allowed to, man. You're a poet writing about balloon-headed children.
and knock jokes. That's my aesthetic. All right.
Well, I mean, we're an hour and 22 minutes right now. This has been a great conversation. We did touch on the Nazis, which I had hoped to slightly. The only thing I wanted to mention was Indiana Jones, and we did that, so I'm happy.
Yeah.
Where are you going from here? What is our plans for the future?
I mean, I have like I sent you that list of publications, and those are things that pretty much most of the things that have happened in the past year. I just had a chapbook that was selected as a finalist for a contest. So for me, that's showing momentum. I'm hoping to carry that and some of my recent publications forward and keep publishing some more poems. And
I don't mean to besmirch chapbooks. Just to me, it sounds. I've never done it all. I'll keep my mouth shut.
Yeah, no, they're prestigious. They're actually really good. I can't think of an exact comparison.
Are you going to go on from MFA and possibly get your PhD, or
no,
maybe continue education? No,
I'm so established in my career and my family and my location. Like, if I wanted to apply to PhD programs, they would be across the country. And my wife and I both have excellent jobs. I'm prolific.
University of Pennsylvania. It's right there, right?
Yeah, if I was going to go to Penn, I'm technically an employee at Penn.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I used to work at the hospital, University of Pennsylvania. Now I work at CHOP, so we're an affiliate. But my job is to help facilitate CHOP doctors negotiating the faculty system at Penn.
Man, wouldn't you have to defend your thesis, which you basically have like 1,000 books already anyway? And just give you a PhD. Just learn Italian or something.
I honestly, the PhD degree I love the idea. I've always been really interested in graphic novels and how the idea of a graphic form can translate into enjambment and line breaks and poetic forms. And that's what I would be pursuing in a PhD program. I don't know what programs exist that could facilitate that, and I don't think Penn does. And the Penn PhD program requires full-time admission, and like I got a really good job. I'm happy. Like I don't need the PhD right now.
You know what I have realized though is you cannot demand people call you a doctor without one. Something I learned.
I love it. I love it when people demand that they call me by their academic affiliations, because the technical academic affiliation for me, since I have my
without even the academic affiliation, just randomly on the street, nobody will call me a doctor when I ask. Just call me a doctor. They look at me like
they won't do that.
They won't do it. I don't know.
Something about the fact that you don't have a beard, I think.
Yeah, and I'm just a stranger on the subway platform. Call me doctor. I just spread out like I'm crazy. I don't know. Call me
It's like
doctor.
that Liz Lemon moment where she realizes if she looks crazy and eats boiled eggs, no one will sit by her in a subway. So
Oh my God.
she gets always a seat.
Oh my God. I hate sitting next to anybody on the subway. I will get up immediately.
I love the subway. I love the subway. It's so weird. And everyone has really interesting shoes. If you ever want to like write things about people, write things about how they are. Like if you just like have a prompt or you need a prompt, look at what they're wearing and look at their shoes and write a story that contrasts them both.
That's totally true, man. The New York subway is the best writing prompt on the face of the planet.
It's so weird. Oh,
if you're looking for something to write, all I have to do is listen to my wife too. She rides the subway to work every single day. I just wait for her to get home and tell me how the subway went.
Yeah. No, I have an essay that's out right now that's literally like there's one section devoted entirely to this one time that everyone on the subway was drunk and we sang Bohemian Rhapsody from 14th to Columbia, and it's just there's no spectacle of humanity that's quite like the subway system.
I've never had an experience like that. The only time anybody, the entire train was doing something, I was scared shitless. It was the G train heading south from Queensboro Plaza to like something, and man, I was not happy. I could not wait to get off that freaking train.
So it was. you have to reframe it, not just in was this a subway moment, but that was like my New York moment. Everyone has that moment where like New York has decided it's no longer trying to eat you. And that was the moment for me that like I realized, you know, New York wasn't going to kill me. And it was an excellent and formative moment. And I'll never forget it. And yeah,
I guess I'm still waiting for New York to decide it's not going to eat me.
Yeah, you're still delectable, man. Sorry.
I asked 3 questions to finish us up. The first question still kind of being workshopped. It comes out a little bit wrong. Somebody from your kind of pedigree, what would you advise somebody that comes to you and asks for advice on how to get to your level of, I don't know, writing kinship or level of writing? What would you tell somebody looking for advice on how to get to your level?
I definitely think that probably the most central component to my writing process is that I've forgiven myself for terrible writing.
Wow.
I think you have to walk into every.
It's wonderful.
It's true. Like if you do not walk into any writing experience ready and willing or having already forgiven yourself for the awful crap that you may write, just like the awful, like just terrible things that may come out of you. If you forgive yourself for that and say, you know what, maybe I'm going to write something really stupid. Maybe I'm going to write 500 words of utter crap, but you're going to maybe walk out of that with 25 great words or one single image or something that you can move forward with. I think that
I've talked to 59 people. You're my 59th person.
Okay.
And 59 people have said 59 different things, and they're all unique and they're all beautiful. And that is a wonderful thing to say. It really is. Forgive yourself.
I think
it really is.
It's been a tough road getting here because I have tried so hard to appeal to audiences and I've tried so hard to write something that I think will get me to like the book deal.
And that's also a beautiful way to look at it. Appeal to an audience. I mean, find a way to get an audience to appreciate what you're trying to do, which is not, I mean, would you say that you're seeking to entertain? I mean, how would you phrase that?
So I think, I mean, going back,
I really hate the idea of being entertainer, right? I mean, I hate the idea of me. I'm not a clown. I don't wear makeup and a red nose.
Yeah, no, it seems performative. But I think, how do I say this? It sort of goes back to what I was saying with how every poem is like bricklaying, right? I mean, there is a performance to bricklaying. There is a component where you're trying to just make a straight and narrow path, or maybe not straight, maybe not narrow, maybe you're winding on a purpose, but there is an essential sort of cosmology, like optical, like this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing it, and I want you to walk this way. And I think that kind of going into the writing process, and knowing that, like knowing that there's a performative element to it, I think that helps with forming your writing, and how that informs kind of audience appeal. Maybe that's not like 100% direct relationship, but I think it's kind of important to it. I do think that if you just focus on writing and writing as a way to appeal to audiences, while I do think it's essential and necessary to acknowledge that you're writing something to be consumed, I think if you only write from the perspective of I'm going to appeal this audience, you're going to write shit. It's just going to be like derivative, like just weird. Like you're either going to go too far one direction, or you're gonna hash ground that's already been like done a million times. And so you have to find that balance. You have to acknowledge that like maybe it's not that audiences like zombies, but maybe it's like audiences like this idea of a protagonist who's in a dire situation and there's no obvious way to escape, you know?
Yeah.
Yet you have to find a way to distill what it is that you're trying to reach with to touch an audience.
Yeah. It's a
But,
hard one, isn't it?
it's super hard. And I don't think there's anybody out there who can say like, this is what works. Like Michael Bay could say explosions work, but you know,
and transforming cars into robots
right.
or whatever.
And Michael Bay is super derided, and he doesn't really reach audiences beyond the spectacle. Like he doesn't even have to try.
Japan loves that guy. Japan loves him.
Really?
He makes billions of dollars. Yeah,
Oh
they
my
love
God.
him. Or China loves him. Asia loves that dude. He makes billions of dollars a year on his Transformers movies.
Well, thanks
It's
for
crazy.
blowing up my point, Ryan. You Michael Bay'd my point.
They love him. And they don't love him because he makes great stories. They love him only because he has massive robots. So basically, I guess the point is, let's make massive robot stories and we'll be good to go.
I mean, I
We're going
guarantee
to
you,
great schools.
if you are listening to this and you are a poet and you write a collection of poems that has explosions
About
and
massive
robots in every single poem, you will win. I just wrote a poem about robots.
Did you?
I just
Awesome,
wrote
man.
a poem because so part of the doubts and weird things that happen with writing is that every time you write a poem, or at least I do, you read it and you work it and you're like, okay, I think I'm done with this poem. There's like immediately this elevator drop of terror where you're like, wait, shit, is that it? Am I done? And I had that moment today.
You've just expressed my entire experience on Twitter, honestly. I read a tweet. It's like, oh, yes, tweet, send. Fuck, I forgot 3 words.
Yeah, no, that's so tweeting is terrible poetry. That's like, if anyone, tweeting is Tumblr delivered as poetry to strangers who probably don't like you. It is so bad. That's why I only try to be joyous on Twitter. Like if you're only positive on Twitter, like you won't get negative responses, which is like getting a positive response.
Just get ignored. I just get ignored.
Exactly.
I just get, that doesn't matter. I try to interact. I mean, there's some nice people. Obviously, I've interacted with some great individuals. And I try, obviously, I have this project that I'm doing. So I try to interact with writers. I'm just getting ignored by certain people like I don't exist.
I know. I hear you. Twitter is volatile, and I think one of the things I love about it is its volatility, because it is so terrible. And then once you figure out how to sort of negotiate it, and you realize that it is an excellent and probably the best platform for celebration. Once you sort of acknowledge that it is just a place that you could do well if you celebrate everybody and you're happy, like, it's okay. I'm not saying that you should always be happy. Like I'm definitely like a sarcastic prick a lot of the times, but I'm a celebratory sarcastic prick. I feel like I'm so
just
yeah. Go ahead.
My second to last question would be, what are you reading? Easy one.
Easy one. So I am currently reading Rodney Jones' Salvation Blues. He's a Southern poet. He was recommended to me by one of my professors in my MFA program. And I liked his book then. I didn't finish it. And I'm sort of in this phase right now where I'm trying to finish everything on my bookshelf. So I'm reading him, and it is very good.
Excuse me.
Yeah, no problem. And then Kaveh Akbar is this one of the examples of these excellent poets that's up and coming. His collection, Calling a Wolf, was just released, and it is superb. And in fact, a lot of what I'm reading right now is sort of, uh, I don't know, orbiting that book because it is so good. I have to find other things to read to stop me from reading it because
Oh, wow.
I just want to tear through it, and that's not how I think it should be read. I think every poem needs a moment, or it needs minutes to surround it, and so I'll read a poem and I'll pause and I'll stop and I'll read maybe something else. And it's almost like you're at a perfumist or something, and like you have that smell of coffee before you encounter the next perfume.
Oh,
Uh,
interesting.
and so it's so good, and I'm struggling with how good it is. Uh, like it is something that needs its own space to breathe and exist, and everything I'm reading is kind of almost like advocating for that space. I'm also reading Viet Thanh Nguyen's The Sympathizer. It is this first person account of a spy in the Vietnam War, who's a communist sympathizer living in the United States. It is very good. It won the Pulitzer. It is very slow, and
Oh, okay. Sounds like
and
something I'd be really into, actually. I like stuff like that a lot.
it's phenomenal. I do think it's very plotting. It's written by an historian, and it has this sort of like this. I don't know. Is there anybody more than a historian who captures and appreciates every detail? Because this man, every sentence. No,
A
actually,
poet? No.
poets like are historians of the present who are trying to cut out most of the present. And historians who write fiction are just like, here's everything, and it is tremendous, and it is dense, and in a similar way to Kaveh Akbar, like I am reading a paragraph, or not a paragraph, a chapter a day, or maybe half a chapter a day, and just kind of overwhelmed. That's tough. It's amazing,
Oh,
um,
man.
but it is super dense. And then I also always read something nerdy. So I'm reading Hanu Rajaniemi's The Quantum Thief. Um,
The Quantum Thief. Okay.
I think
I'm
he's
writing all these down, and I'm actually probably going to only read The Sympathizer and The Quantum Thief.
The Quantum Thief. It's great. It's super
I
simple
have the
fiction.
picture of a guy popping through a clock, right?
So no,
No?
but close. So the story is about this guy who was he's in this like intergalactic prison, and someone bails him out, and he doesn't quite know why, and he basically goes to Mars, and this is where the quantum part comes in. In Mars, in this world or this universe, um, your lifespan is measured by minutes, but those minutes are also managed in a capitalistic way. So you can use minutes to buy experiences or buy basic fundamental goods. And so he's traveling there, and supposedly he's lost his old self and his old memories, and he's trying to collect them and gather them to finally reform to his true self. And then he'll pull off a heist, but we don't really know about that. So it's all about this. He's revisiting this old life that he's abandoned, that he's forgotten, and he's regathering himself. And that's kind of synonymous with also him becoming more powerful. But while this is happening, there is another guy who's on Mars who is solving a murder mystery based around chocolate. And it is super weird, and it all comes together amazingly. And it is, of everything that I'm reading, it is the only thing that has compelled me to finish it immediately that I have. And I'm pretty much done. It's a part of a trilogy, and I can't wait to read more. It is fantastic.
Man, I have about 100 books on my phone right now, and I'm still reading Sapiens, A History of Us.
Mm.
I have twins. And I'm writing a novel and thousands of short stories. So I'm never going to finish any of these books. My last question for you is, where can we find you on the World Wide Web?
Yeah, so my Twitter and my Instagram are the same. It's Todd E. Dillard. The E is for Edward, and I hate it. And I wish all my handles were Todd
God,
Dillard.
man, one of my favorite characters from the C.S. Lewis Narnia Chronicles was Edward.
Yeah, Edward is a very great character in Narnia. Todd, among the names of children born in the late 70s and early 80s, Todd is just one echelon above Biff. It's terrible, and but it's right. That's stealing, right? Like
you're a writer, man. You should have just picked a different name.
It's my fault, I know. But yeah, Todd D. Dillard is where you can find me, and usually I'm going to be probably celebrating poetry or writing, or being super sarcastic and negative about the Trump administration. I got two modes. So
yeah, man.
Occasionally I'll tweet about Magic the Gathering, but no one follows those tweets except for like a handful of people.
I'll like them if I see them. And I definitely have enjoyed this conversation as well. And I'll invite you back for sure. And Mirage, we'll try to get you on that podcast as well.
Sounds great.
Maybe talk about one of your favorite authors or whatnot. But until then, thank you so much, man. And have a great night.
Brian, I had a great conversation with you. This is fantastic. And
yeah,
I look forward to hearing this later. And you know what? Have a great night.